The signal came through the Deep Space Communications Array at 3 in the morning, Earth time. The night shift operator at Luna Command almost missed it completely. The transmission was weak, broken up by interference, and came from a star. System that most humans had never heard of. Jake Morrison was sleeping in his quarters aboard the space station when the emergency alarm woke him up. As captain of the Terran Defense Force flagship, he was used to being called at all hours. But something about this alarm felt different. It was the kind of sound that meant real trouble, not just another drill or minor incident. He pulled on his uniform and walked quickly to the command center. The hallways of Luna Command were quiet at this hour, with only the essential crew on duty. Emergency lights cast long shadows on the metal walls, and Jake could hear the hum of the life support systems, keeping them all alive in the cold vacuum of space. "What do we have?" Jake asked as he entered the command center. The large room was filled with computer screens and control panels, all glowing with different colored lights. Several officers were gathered around the main communications console. Their faces tight with concern. Lieutenant Amy Brooks looked up from her station. She was the best communications officer in the fleet, and Jake had worked with her for 3 years. If she looked worried, then the situation was serious. "We picked up a distress signal from the Kepler 442 system," she said. "It's not in any language our computers recognize, but the universal translator is picking up some words. Captain, I think someone is asking for help." Jake moved closer to listen as Amy played the transmission. The voice that came through the speakers was clearly not human. It had a musical quality to it, rising and falling in strange patterns. But even through the alien sounds, Jake could hear something that needed no translation. Fear, desperation, the sound of someone who was running out of time. "How far away is Kepler 442? Jake asked. "About 23 light years from Earth," answered Dr. Kevin Shaw, the station's chief science officer. Kevin was a thin man with gray hair who knew more about space and alien life than anyone else in the human fleet. "It's outside our normal patrol range, but we've detected some radio signals from that direction before. We always assumed it was just another civilization, but we never made contact." Jake listened to the message again. Even though he could not understand the words, the meaning was clear. Someone out there was in trouble, and they were asking anyone who could hear them for help. "Can we send a reply?" Jake asked. Amy shook her head. "The signal is too weak. We can barely receive it, and I don't think we have enough power to send anything back that far. If we want to respond, we would have to go there in person." At that moment, Admiral Lisa Taylor walked into the command center. She was the head of the entire Terran Defense Force and one of the most respected military leaders in human history. Jake had served under her for years, and he had never seen her back down from a fight when people needed help. "I heard the alarm," she said. "What's the situation?" Jake quickly explained about the distress signal. Admiral Taylor listened carefully, her face showing no emotion. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment, thinking. "Play it again," she said finally. Amy played the transmission once more. The alien voice filled the command center, speaking words that none of them could understand, but carrying a message that was perfectly clear to anyone who had ever been in danger. "How many ships do we have ready for deep space deployment?" Admiral Taylor asked. 12 warships, including the TDF Vengeance," Jake replied. "All of them are fully supplied and ready for combat operations." Admiral Taylor nodded slowly. "Captain Morrison, I want you to prepare your fleet for immediate departure. We're going to Kepler 442. "Ma'am, we don't even know who sent this message," said Commander Nick Palmer, who had just arrived in the command center. "We don't know what kind of trouble they're in, or if we can even help them. For all we know, this could be a trap." Admiral Taylor looked at him with steady eyes. "Commander, Someone out there is asking for help. That's all I need to know. We might be the only ones who can hear them, and we might be their only hope. I'm not going to ignore that. Jake felt a surge of pride. This was why he served in the Terran Defense Force, not just to protect Earth, but to help anyone who needed it, even if they were complete strangers from another world. How long will it take to get there? Admiral Taylor asked. 3 weeks through hyperspace, Jake answered. Maybe less if we push the engines hard. Then we leave in 6 hours. Get your crews ready, Captain. We're going to answer that call. The 12 ships of the human fleet moved through hyperspace like ghosts in the night. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the TDF Vengeance, watching the strange colors of hyperspace flow past the main view screen. They had been traveling for 2 weeks now, and every day brought them closer to a star system where something terrible was happening. The journey had not been easy. Hyperspace was dangerous, and the route to Kepler 442 took them through areas the human ships had never explored before. Twice they had to drop out of hyperspace to avoid massive energy storms that could tear a ship apart. Once they had to change course completely when their sensors detected something large and unknown moving in the darkness between stars. Lieutenant Amy Brooks had been working around the clock in the communications center, trying to pick up more signals from their destination. Every few hours she would catch fragments of transmissions, but they were getting weaker and weaker. Whatever was happening in the Kepler 442 system, it was getting worse. Any new messages? Jake asked as he walked into the communications room. Amy looked up from her console. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, and she had been drinking coffee for so many hours that her hands shook slightly. Nothing clear, Captain, but I'm picking up a lot of energy signatures that look like weapons fire. Big weapons. The kind that can destroy entire cities. Jake felt his stomach tighten. They were still a week away from Kepler 442, and people were dying while they traveled through hyperspace. He wished the human fleet could move faster, but their ships were already pushed to their limits. Down in the science labs, Dr. Kevin Shaw was working on a different problem. He had been studying every piece of information they had about alien technology, trying to figure out what kind of enemy they might face. The computer screens around him showed weapon designs, ship configurations, and energy patterns from dozens of different alien species. Captain, Dr. Shaw said when Jake came to visit the lab, I've been thinking about what we might find when we get there. Most alien species we know about use energy weapons. Lasers, plasma cannons, particle beams. But human ships are built differently. Jake nodded. Human warships carried railguns that fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. They also had missile systems and kinetic weapons that most aliens had never seen before, while other species had developed energy shields and armor designed to stop energy weapons. Very few had defenses against old-fashioned bullets and explosives. Do you think that will give us an advantage? Jake asked. Dr. Shaw smiled for the first time in days. Captain, I think we're going to surprise whoever is causing trouble in that system. They won't expect us to fight the way we do. In another part of the ship, Marine Colonel Steve Rivers was training his soldiers for combat in zero gravity. The cargo bay had been converted into a training area where Marines could practice fighting in spacesuits. They moved through the air using small jetpacks, learning to shoot and maneuver in 3 dimensions. Remember, Colonel Rivers shouted to his troops, aliens don't fight like humans. They think in patterns. They follow rules. We don't. When we get into combat, I want you to do the unexpected. Confuse them. Make them think. And while they're thinking, we'll be shooting. The Marines cheered and continued their training. They had been soldiers for years, but this would be their first fight against an alien enemy. They were nervous, but they were also excited. This was what they had trained for their entire careers. Sergeant Beth Collins was in the command center, trying to establish better communication with the source of the distress signals. She was the best communications specialist in the human fleet, and she had been working on a new approach to alien languages. Instead of trying to translate words, she was looking for patterns in the transmissions that might tell them what was happening. "I think I've figured something out," she told Jake when he came to check on her progress. "The aliens who sent the distress signal, they're not just asking for help. They're warning us. The last few transmissions I've picked up, they're trying to tell us to stay away." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Stay away from what? Beth pulled up a series of signals on her screen. "I'm not sure, but every time they send a message, there's something else in the background. Something that sounds like it's getting closer. And Captain, whatever it is, it sounds hungry." The next day, the human fleet was forced to drop out of hyperspace again. This time, it was not because of an energy storm or an unknown object. This time, they stopped because they were close enough to Kepler 442 to see what was happening there. The sensor readings were unlike anything the humans had ever seen. There were ships in the system, but they were wrong. Somehow, the energy signatures were strange, and the shapes that appeared on their screens looked more like living creatures than machines. "Captain," said Commander Nick Palmer from his position at the tactical station, "I'm reading at least 50 large objects in the system. They're moving in formation, but it's not like any military formation I've ever seen. It's more like a pack of animals hunting." Jake stared at the sensor display. Whatever they were about to face, it was not going to be a normal battle. The enemy ships were huge, much larger than anything in the human fleet. And there were so many of them. "How much longer until we reach the system?" Jake asked. 6 days, Captain," replied the navigation officer. Jake nodded and turned to address his crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We're about to enter a combat zone unlike anything we've ever seen before. I want all weapons systems checked and ready. I want all Marines prepared for possible boarding actions. And I want everyone to remember why we're here. Someone asked for our help, and we're going to give it to them." The human fleet continued its journey through hyperspace, racing toward a battle that would change the course of galactic history. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system, and what they saw made everyone on every bridge fall silent. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the main screen of the TDF Vengeance, unable to believe what his eyes were showing him. The system was full of ships, but they were not like any ships that humans had ever built or even imagined. These vessels looked alive. They had curved surfaces that pulsed with strange lights, and appendages that moved like arms or tentacles. Some of them were small, about the size of human destroyers. Others were massive, bigger than entire space stations. "My God," whispered Dr. Kevin Shaw, who was standing next to Jake on the bridge. "Those aren't ships. They're creatures." The alien vessels were spread throughout the system, moving in patterns that reminded Jake of sharks circling their prey. In the center of the system, near where the planet should have been, there was something that made Jake's blood run cold. The planet was still there, but it was wrong. Huge chunks of it were missing, as if something had been taking bites out of it. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her communication station, "I'm picking up massive energy readings from those ships, but it's not normal engine energy. It's more like life signs. These things are alive." Commander Nick Palmer was studying the tactical display, his face pale. "Captain, I count over 60 large vessels, and at least 200 smaller ones. They're not in any kind of military formation. They're just scattered around the system like they're feeding." That word made Jake feel sick. Feeding. That's exactly what it looked like. The alien ships were feeding on the planet and everything else in the system. "Are there any survivors?" Jake asked. Amy worked at her console for several minutes before. Answering. I'm picking up some weak transmissions from 3 locations. They sound like the same species that sent the original distress call. But Captain, the signals are very weak. I don't think they have much time left. Jake made a decision that would change everything. Take us closer, but keep us hidden. I want to see what we're dealing with before we reveal ourselves. The human fleet moved deeper into the system, using their stealth systems to avoid detection. As they got closer, the true horror of the situation became clear. The alien ships were not just attacking the planet and its people. They were consuming them. Jake watched in disgust as one of the smaller alien vessels approached what looked like a space station orbiting the planet. The ship extended tentacle-like appendages that wrapped around the station. Then, slowly and deliberately, it began to pull the station apart. But instead of just destroying it, the alien ship was somehow absorbing the pieces into itself. The ship actually grew larger as it consumed the station. They're eating everything, said Dr. Shaw, his voice barely above a whisper. The ships, the stations, probably the people too. And every time they eat something, they get bigger and stronger. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Grant, the fleet's intelligence officer, had been studying the alien movements through his binoculars. Captain, I think I see a pattern. The larger ships seem to be directing the smaller ones. It's like a hive mind. They're working together, but there's definitely a command structure. Jake nodded. That was useful information. If the aliens worked as a hive mind, then disrupting their command structure might confuse the entire fleet. Engineer Chief Mary Stone had been running scans on the alien ships from the engineering section. She called up to the bridge with news that gave Jake the first hope he had felt since arriving in the system. Captain, I've analyzed the energy signatures from those ships. They use some kind of bioelectric field for defense. It's probably very good against energy weapons. But Captain, I don't think it would do much against kinetic weapons. Our railguns and missiles might be exactly what we need. Before Jake could respond, the communication system crackled to life. This time, the voice was clear enough for the universal translator to understand most of the words. Please ... If anyone can hear this, stay away ... They consume everything. They learn from what they eat. Our ships ... Our weapons. Everything we had. They took it all and made it part of themselves. Don't let them find your world. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving the bridge of the TDF Vengeance in silence. Captain, said Amy quietly, that transmission came from one of the 3 surviving locations. Now I'm only reading 2. Jake felt anger building inside him. These creatures, whatever they were, had destroyed an entire civilization. They had eaten a planet and everyone on it, and now they were hunting down the last survivors like animals. All hands, this is the captain, Jake announced over the ship's communication system. We have found the enemy, and it is worse than we imagined. These creatures don't just conquer. They consume everything they defeat and use it to make themselves stronger. They have destroyed an entire world, and they're still hunting the survivors. He paused, looking around at his crew. Every face showed the same mixture of horror and determination. But they made one mistake. They've never faced humans before. They don't know how we fight, and they don't know that we never give up when innocent people need our help. We're going to save whoever is left in this system, and we're going to make sure these creatures never get the chance to do this to another world. Jake turned to Commander Palmer. Signal the fleet. We're going in. The 12 human ships moved deeper into the system, their weapons powered up and their crews ready for a battle unlike anything they had ever faced before. They were outnumbered 20-1, but they had something the aliens didn't expect. They had the fury of humanity, and they were not going to let these monsters win. The human fleet moved into position, while the alien creatures continued their feeding. Captain Jake Morrison studied the enemy through the view screen and realized something important. These aliens had been winning for so long that they had become predictable. They expected their enemies to fight in organized formations, to follow rules, to be afraid. Dr. Shaw, Jake called to the science officer, you said these creatures learn from what they consume. What happens if we give them something they can't understand? Dr. Shaw looked up from his scanner readings. Captain, if they've been defeating the same types of enemies over and over, they might not know how to handle something completely different. They might be programmed to expect certain kinds of attacks. Jake smiled. That was exactly what he had been thinking. Every alien species they knew about fought space battles the same way. They formed neat lines of ships. They targeted the biggest threats first, and they used energy weapons at long range. But humans didn't fight like that. Commander Palmer, Jake said, I want you to forget everything you learned in the academy about proper space combat. I want you to think like a pirate, like a rebel, like someone who has to win against impossible odds. Nick Palmer grinned. He had served with Jake for years, and he knew that look in the captain's eyes. It meant Jake had a plan that was either brilliant or completely insane. Sometimes both. What do you have in mind, Captain? Jake turned to address the entire bridge crew. These creatures are used to fighting enemies who are afraid of them. They expect their targets to run away or to fight defensively. They don't expect anyone to charge straight at them. And they definitely don't expect anyone to fight dirty. He activated the fleet communication system. All ships, this is Captain Morrison. We're going to do something that goes against every rule of space combat. We're going to split up, and we're going to attack from every direction at once. Don't worry about formations. Don't worry about covering each other. Just find the biggest, ugliest alien ship you can see and hurt it as badly as possible. On the TDF Ranger, Commander Dan Cooper was listening to Jake's orders with growing excitement. Dan was known throughout the fleet as a pilot who took risks that other commanders would never consider. This kind of battle was exactly what he had been trained for. You heard the man, Dan told his crew. We're going hunting. Pilot Commander Ryan Bell was in the fighter bay of the TDF Vengeance, preparing his squadron for launch. His fighters were small and fast, designed to get in close and attack weak points on enemy ships. Against the massive alien vessels, they would be like insects attacking elephants. But insects could be very annoying if they knew where to sting. Listen up, Ryan told his pilots over the radio. These alien ships are alive, which means they have nervous systems. Our job is to find those nerve centers and mess them up. Dr. Shaw thinks they're located near the glowing parts of the ships. Target those areas and keep moving. Don't let them get a lock on you. Engineer Chief Mary Stone was in the weapons control room, making final adjustments to the railgun systems. Human railguns were simple weapons that fired solid metal projectiles at incredible speeds. They were old-fashioned compared to energy weapons, but they hit hard and they were difficult to defend against. Captain, Mary reported over the communication system. All railguns are loaded with armor-piercing rounds. Our missiles are armed with kinetic warheads instead of explosives. If those alien shields can't stop solid objects, we're going to punch right through them. Dr. Shaw was studying the tactical display, looking for weaknesses in the alien formation. Captain, I think I found something interesting. The larger ships seem to be controlling the smaller ones through some kind of signal. If we can disrupt those signals, we might be able to confuse their entire fleet. Jake nodded. How do we disrupt the signals? Human computer systems, Dr. Shaw said with a grin. Our computers don't work like alien technology. They're chaotic, adaptable, and completely unpredictable. If we can get close enough to upload some of our computer programs into their systems, it might cause them to malfunction. Lieutenant Colonel Paul Grant had been watching the alien movements through powerful telescopes. Captain, I've identified what looks like the command ship. It's that massive vessel near the center of their formation. It's about 10 times bigger than our largest ship, and it seems to be directing all the others. Jake studied the alien command ship through the view screen. It was enormous, covered in pulsing lights and moving tentacles. It looked more like a sea creature than a spaceship, but that gave him an idea. In the old days on Earth, Jake said, when fishermen wanted to catch a large school of fish, they would sometimes attack the leader. When the leader was hurt or confused, the rest of the school would scatter in panic. Commander Palmer understood immediately. You want to go after their command ship. Not just attack it, Jake said. I want to board it. I want to put Marines inside that thing and let them cause as much damage as possible from the inside. While we're doing that, the rest of the fleet will hit them from all directions. Colonel Steve Rivers had been listening to the conversation from the Marine barracks. Captain, my Marines are ready for boarding action. We've been training for zero-gravity combat, and we've got breaching equipment that can cut through any kind of hull. Jake felt his confidence growing. The human fleet was outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the aliens had never faced before. They had unpredictability, creativity, and the willingness to try tactics that seemed impossible. All right, everyone, Jake announced to the entire fleet. We're going to show these creatures what happens when they mess with the wrong species. We're going to hit them so hard and so fast that they won't know what's happening until it's too late. He paused, looking at the alien fleet that filled the star system like a plague of locusts. Remember, we're not just fighting for the survivors in this system. We're fighting to make sure these creatures never find Earth. We're fighting for every human who will ever be born, and for every innocent species that these monsters might target next. Jake took a deep breath and gave the order that would start. The battle. All ships, attack formation Alpha. Fighters, launch when ready. Marines, prepare for boarding action. Today, we teach the galaxy that humanity does not run from monsters. We hunt them. The battle began with silence. The human fleet moved out of their hiding positions, so quietly that the alien creatures didn't notice them at first. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the TDF, vengeance as his ships spread out across the star system like hunters surrounding their prey. Then everything exploded into chaos. Commander Dan Cooper's ship, the TDF Ranger, was the first to fire. His railguns sent solid metal projectiles, screaming through space at speeds that would have torn apart any human-built vessel. The rounds slammed into the side of a massive alien creature that had been feeding on debris from a destroyed space station. The alien ship shuddered as the metal projectiles punched through its bioelectric shields like they weren't even there. Dark fluid sprayed from the wounds, and the creature let out a sound that the human sensors picked up as a low, angry howl. Direct hit, Ben shouted over the communication system. Their shields can't stop kinetic weapons. All across the star system, the other human ships opened fire. Railgun rounds and missiles streaked through space, hitting the alien creatures before they could react. The aliens had been feeding peacefully for months, and they were completely unprepared for an attack this sudden and violent. Pilot Commander Ryan Bell led his fighter squadron in a diving attack on one of the smaller alien vessels. The fighters moved like angry wasps, too small and fast for the creature's weapons to track. Ryan's pilots targeted the glowing nerve centers that Dr. Shaw had identified, hitting them with focused laser fire. Target the bright spots, Ryan called to his pilots. Make them hurt. The alien creature thrashed in space as the fighters stung it over and over. Its tentacles whipped through the vacuum, trying to swat the small human ships. But the pilots were too quick and too unpredictable. On the bridge of the TDF Vengeance, Jake watched the tactical display with growing excitement. The human attack was working better than he had hoped. The aliens were confused and angry, but they weren't coordinating their defense. They were just lashing out at whatever was closest. "Captain," said Lieutenant Amy Brooks, "I'm picking up panic signals from the alien ships. They're trying to communicate with each other, but they're all talking at once. It's like they've never been surprised before." That was exactly what Jake had hoped for. The alien creatures had grown used to easy victories against enemies who fought in predictable patterns. They didn't know how to handle an attack that came from every direction at once. "Dr. Shaw," Jake called, "are you ready with the computer virus?" Dr. Shaw was standing at a special console that had been connected directly to the ship's main computer. "Ready, Captain. As soon as we get close enough to the command ship, I can upload our operating system directly into their network." Jake nodded and turned to Colonel Steve Rivers, who was standing nearby in full combat armor. "Colonel, are your Marines ready for boarding action?" "Ready and waiting, Captain," Steve replied. "We've got breaching charges that will cut through anything, and my Marines are trained for close combat in zero gravity. Once we get inside that command ship, we'll tear it apart from the inside." The TDF Vengeance accelerated toward the massive alien command ship, its railguns firing continuously. The huge creature was trying to turn to face this new threat, but it was too big and too slow. Human weapons hammered against its hull, leaving deep wounds that leaked strange fluids into space. Other human ships were having similar success. TDF Ranger had destroyed 2 smaller alien vessels and was chasing a third across the system. The TDF Thunder was engaged in a close-range battle with an alien ship that looked like a giant jellyfish, its missiles exploding against the creatures. Soft body, but the aliens were learning. The larger ships began to coordinate their attacks, using their superior numbers to surround individual human vessels. The TDF Lightning found itself trapped between 3 alien creatures, their energy weapons creating a deadly crossfire. "Lightning is in trouble," Commander Palmer reported from the tactical station. "They're taking heavy damage." Jake watched as the TDF Lightning's shields flickered under the alien assault. The ship was fast and well armed, but it couldn't fight 3 enemies at once. "Ryan, take your fighters and help the Lightning," Jake ordered. "On our way, Captain," Ryan replied. His fighter squadron broke off from their current target and raced across the system toward the trapped human ship. The fighters arrived just as the TDF Lightning shields failed. But instead of attacking the alien ships directly, Ryan had a different idea. He led his squadron in a series of quick strikes against the nerve centers of all 3 alien creatures, disrupting their coordination. "Hit and run," Ryan shouted to his pilots. "Don't let them focus on the Lightning." The alien creatures, suddenly attacked by the small, fast fighters, lost their focus on the TDF Lightning. The human ship used the distraction to escape, its engines glowing bright as it accelerated away from the trap. Meanwhile, the TDF Vengeance was closing in on the alien command ship. The massive creature was trying to defend itself, but its weapons were designed for long-range combat against predictable enemies. The human ship was too close and moving too erratically for the aliens' targeting systems to track. "We're in range for boarding," Colonel Rivers reported. "Launch the boarding pods?" Jake looked at the alien command ship on the view screen. It was huge and terrifying, covered in pulsing lights and moving appendages. But somewhere inside that creature were the controls that directed the entire alien fleet. "Launch the boarding pods," Jake ordered. "Dr. Shaw, get ready to upload that virus as soon as the Marines reach the command center." 8 small pods launched from the TDF Vengeance, each carrying a team of human Marines. The pods were designed to punch through enemy hulls, and deliver soldiers directly into the heart of enemy ships. They had never been used against living vessels before, but Jake was confident they would work. The boarding pods struck the alien command ship like bullets, their armored tips cutting through the creature's bioelectric shields and burying themselves deep in its hull. The alien ship shuddered and let out a sound that was part roar, part scream. "Boarding pods have penetrated the target," Colonel Rivers reported. "Marines are inside." Jake smiled grimly. The real battle was just beginning. The Marines were now inside the alien command ship, and Dr. Shaw was ready to upload the computer virus that would disrupt the entire alien fleet. The humans had surprised their enemies, but now they had to finish what they started. The fate of the star system, and possibly the entire galaxy, depended on what happened in the next few minutes. Inside the alien command ship, Colonel Steve Rivers and his Marines found themselves in a nightmare world. The corridors were not made of metal or plastic like human ships. Instead, they were made of living tissue that pulsed and moved around them. Strange lights flickered under the surface of the walls, and the air was thick and humid. "Stay together," Steve whispered into his radio. "Watch for movement. This whole ship is alive, and it knows we're here." The Marines moved through the organic corridors in groups of 4, their weapons ready. They had trained for boarding actions on metal ships with straight hallways and normal doors. This was completely different. The passages curved and twisted like the inside of some giant animal, and there were no clear signs showing where important areas might be. Sergeant Mike Torres was leading one of the Marine squads when the walls around them suddenly started to close in. "Colonel, the ship is trying to crush us," he shouted over the radio. "Use the breaching charges," Steve ordered. "Blow holes in the walls and keep moving forward." The Marines attached explosive charges to the living walls and detonated them. Dark fluid sprayed everywhere as the ship screamed in pain. The sound was so loud and terrible that it made the Marines' teeth hurt, but they kept moving. On the bridge of the TDF Vengeance, Dr. Shaw was monitoring the Marines' progress through their helmet cameras. "Captain, the Marines are making progress, but that ship is fighting back. It's trying to trap them inside itself." Jake watched the horrifying images from inside the alien vessel. The ship was definitely alive, and it was angry. How much longer? Until they reached the command center? "Unknown, Captain," Dr. Shaw replied. "I'm trying to map the ship's internal structure, but it keeps changing. The passages are moving and reorganizing themselves." Meanwhile, the battle outside was reaching a critical point. The alien creatures had recovered from their initial surprise and were beginning to coordinate their attacks. The massive alien ships were forming into groups, using their superior numbers to surround the human vessels. The TDF Thunder was locked in a deadly battle with 3 alien creatures that looked like giant spiders made of metal and flesh. Captain Lisa Ward was pushing her ship to its limits, using every trick she knew to avoid the alien weapons while returning fire with her railguns. "We can't keep this up much longer," she reported to Jake over the radio. "We're running low on ammunition, and our shields are almost gone." Similar reports were coming in from other human ships. The TDF Ranger had taken heavy damage to its engines and was moving slowly. The TDF Storm was completely surrounded by smaller alien vessels that were trying to board it, but then something unexpected happened. Deep inside the alien command ship, Sergeant Torres and his squad found what they were looking for. They entered a large chamber that was filled with pulsing nerve tissue and glowing control nodes. It was clearly the brain of the massive creature. "Colonel, we found it," Torres reported. "We're in what looks like the command center." Steve Rivera was with another squad in a different part of the ship, but he could see Torres's location on his tactical display. "Good work, Sergeant." Dr. Shaw, R. "You ready to upload the virus?" Back on the TDF Vengeance, Dr. Shaw was waiting at his computer console with the virus program ready. I need a direct connection to their control system. Can the Marines plug one of our computers into their network? Torres looked around the alien command center. The walls were covered with organic structures that pulsed with electrical activity. I see something that might work, he told his squad. Rodriguez, bring that portable computer over here. Corporal Maria Rodriguez carried a small human computer to one of the glowing nerve clusters. She attached connection cables to the organic material, trying not to think about what she was actually touching. Connection established, Dr. Shaw announced from the TDF Vengeance. Uploading virus now. The human computer virus was a simple but effective weapon. Human computer systems had been designed to be flexible and adaptable, capable of handling unexpected situations and random errors. Alien systems were typically much more organized and predictable. When the chaotic human software entered the alien ship's nervous system, it was like introducing a disease into a healthy body. The alien ship's brain tried to understand the human programs, but they made no sense according to its logic patterns. The effect was immediate and devastating. The alien command ship began to convulse as its nervous system was overwhelmed by information it could not process. The creature let out a sound that was part scream and part electronic static. More importantly, the disruption spread to every other alien ship in the system. The command ship had been controlling the entire fleet through a biological network, and when its brain was damaged, all the other creatures lost their coordination. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the TDF Vengeance as the alien fleet suddenly stopped working together. Ships that had been moving in perfect formation began to drift aimlessly. Others started attacking each other, apparently unable to tell friend from enemy. It's working. Commander Palmer shouted from the tactical station. The aliens are turning on each other. The smaller alien creatures, no longer receiving clear orders from the command ship, began to panic. Some tried to flee the system. Others attacked anything that moved, including their own allies. The organized alien fleet dissolved into chaos in a matter of minutes. But the human Marines were still trapped inside the dying command ship. As the creature's nervous system failed, the passages inside were becoming unstable. Walls collapsed, corridors flooded with strange fluids, and the air became toxic. All Marines, evacuate immediately, Colonel Rivers ordered. This ship is dying, and it's going to take us with it if we don't get out now. The Marines fought their way back through the collapsing corridors, using their remaining explosive charges to blast through walls that had closed behind them. The ship was screaming constantly now, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Sergeant Torres and his squad were the last ones out, barely making it to their boarding pod before the section they had been in completely collapsed. The pods launched from the dying alien ship just as massive explosions began to tear through its hull. Marines are clear, Colonel Rivers reported as the last boarding pod docked with the TDF Vengeance. The command ship is finished. Jake watched as the enormous alien creature began to break apart. Without its nervous system to hold it together, the biomechanical ship was literally falling to pieces. Dark fluids and debris spread out into space as the massive vessel died. All across the star system, the other alien ships were suffering similar fates. Cut off from their central command, many of the creatures were attacking each other in confusion. The ones that weren't fighting among themselves were trying to flee, but they were moving slowly and clumsily without coordination. The human fleet moved in for the final assault, their weapons targeting the confused and scattered alien vessels. What had begun as a hopeless battle against overwhelming odds had turned into a rout. 3 hours after the battle began, silence returned to the Kepler 442 system. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the TDF Vengeance, looking out at a scene It would have been impossible to imagine just hours before. The space around them was filled with the remains of alien creatures that had seemed invincible when the human fleet first arrived. The massive command ship was nothing but floating debris now. Smaller alien vessels drifted dead in space, their bioelectric lights dimmed forever. A few of the creatures had managed to escape into hyperspace, but most of the fleet that had terrorized this system for months was gone. Damage report, Jake asked Commander Nick Palmer. TDF Thunder has heavy damage to her hull, but she's still space-worthy, Nick replied. TDF Ranger lost one of her main engines, and TDF Storm has some hull breaches, but no casualties. Overall, we got off easier than we had any right to expect, Jake nodded. They had been incredibly lucky. The alien creatures had been powerful and dangerous, but they had never faced an enemy like humans before. Their confusion had saved human lives. Captain, said Lieutenant Amy Brooks from her communications station, I'm receiving transmissions from the survivors in the system. They want to talk to us. Put them through, Jake ordered. The main screen flickered, and suddenly Jake was looking at an alien face unlike anything he had ever seen. The creature had large, gentle eyes and skin that seemed to shimmer with different colors. When it spoke, the universal translator made its words understandable, but Jake could hear the musical quality of its natural voice underneath. I am Admiral Kethver of the Zalani Coalition Defense Force, the alien said. Are you the ones who answered our distress call? Yes, Jake replied. I am Captain Morrison of the Terran Defense Force. We received your signal and came as quickly as we could. The alien's eyes seemed to fill with tears. We thought we were going to die. The Vorthik had been hunting us for months. They destroyed our homeworld, consumed our fleets, and killed billions of our people. We never thought anyone would come to help us. Jake felt a wave of sadness as he realized how much these people had suffered. How many of you are left? Perhaps 50,000. Survivors scattered across 3 hidden bases, Admiral Kethfor replied, out of a population of 12 billion. The Vorthik ate everything else. The number was so large that Jake had trouble understanding it. 12 billion people, an entire civilization, reduced to 50,000 survivors hiding in the wreckage of their own star system. Admiral, Jake said, my fleet will help you evacuate your people to safety. We can escort you to neutral space where you can rebuild. But Admiral Kethver shook his head. Captain Morrison, you don't understand what you have done here today. The Vorthik have been consuming civilizations across this part of the galaxy for thousands of years. No one has ever defeated them before. No one has ever even hurt them seriously. Dr. Kevin Shaw, who had been listening to the conversation, stepped forward. Admiral, how many other species have the Vorthik attacked? Hundreds, Admiral Kethver replied sadly. Maybe thousands. They move from system to system, consuming everything they find and growing stronger. Every ship they destroy, every planet they devour, makes them more powerful. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Are there other fleets like the one we just fought? Many others, larger ones. The fleet that attacked us was just a small hunting group. The main Vorthik swarms have ships the size of moons, and there are millions of them. The bridge of the TDF Vengeance fell silent as everyone absorbed this information. They had won a great victory, but they had also painted a target on Earth's back. When the Vorthik learned that humans had destroyed one of their fleets, they would want revenge. Captain, said Admiral Kethver, my people would like to offer you something. We have star maps showing the locations of hundreds of civilizations. We have technology that might help you fight the Vorthik, and we have knowledge of their patterns and habits gathered over centuries of running from them. Jake looked at his crew. They were all thinking the same thing. Earth was no longer safe. The Vorthik would eventually find humanity's homeworld, and when they did, they would bring fleets that would make today's battle look like a minor skirmish. What are you proposing, Admiral? Jake asked. An alliance. Your people have something? No other species has ever shown against the Vorthik. You have the ability to defeat them, but you will need help. You will need allies, resources, and knowledge of the galaxy beyond your own space. Jake made a decision that would change the course of human history. Admiral Kethver, on behalf of Earth and the Terran Defense Force, I accept your offer of alliance. The alien admiral smiled, the first expression of joy Jake had seen from him. Then perhaps there is hope after all. Captain, your people have given us something we thought we had lost forever. You have given us the chance to fight back. Over the next several hours, the human fleet worked with the Zelani survivors to evacuate their people and gather their technology. Dr. Shaw was particularly excited about the alien star maps, which showed the locations of dozens of other species that might be willing to join an alliance against the VORTHAK, as the TDF Vengeance prepared to leave the Kepler 442 system. Jake received a priority message from Earth. Admiral Lisa Taylor peered on his screen, her face serious. Captain Morrison, we've been monitoring your battle through long-range sensors. The entire Defense Council has been watching. What you and your fleet accomplished today was incredible. Thank you, Admiral, Jake replied. But I have to tell you, this is just the beginning. The aliens we fought were just a small part of a much larger threat. Admiral Taylor nodded. We know. Dr. Shaw transmitted his preliminary report about the Vorthik. Captain, I'm ordering you to return to Earth immediately. We have a lot of work to do. Jake looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, enormous alien fleets were moving through space, consuming everything in their path. Earth had perhaps months or years before the Vorthik found them. But for the first time since receiving that original distress call, Jake felt hopeful. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy. They had allies now, and they had proven that the Vorthik could be defeated. All ships, prepare for hyperspace jump, Jake announced to his fleet. We're going home. As the human fleet entered hyperspace, carrying their new allies and the knowledge that would reshape humanity's future, Jake knew that they were returning to an Earth that would never be the same. The age of human isolation was over. The age of human expansion across the stars was about to begin. Behind them, the Kepler 442 system was quiet for the first time in months. The Vorthik were gone, and slowly, carefully, a few small ships emerged from hidden bases. The Zelani, who had chosen to stay behind, began the long process of rebuilding their civilization. They would not be rebuilding alone. Earth would help them, and together they would prepare for the war that was coming. The war that would determine whether the galaxy belonged to consumers or protectors. Humanity had made its choice.